Season 10 just dropped and you want to know how exactly to get ahead of the curve. I'm going to go over everything step by step so you can find yourself at the top of the peak come Season 10. Now let's break it down bit by bit. What exactly should we be focusing on? Well, number one, open up your map and head down to Cutlass Keys. Here you'll find your main story MSQ. Once you do that, you'll end up in Night Haven at the bottom of the map right here. Just follow the main story questline all the way until level 70. If you can complete it if you want, but if you're trying to min-max, you should stop there. Pro tip, if your main story quest is still completely broken, head over to Expeditions, click random down here, and you should get about half a level a dungeon run. It's not as fun or as fast as the MSQ, but it's the best choice we got as a backup since there is a bug in the game right now. Alright, you're done the MSQ. Now exactly what should we do in order to get ahead of the rest? Well, I would always try and recommend hitting your weekly Umbrael Crystal Cap. You have 4,000 each week and you want to make sure you maximize this to the best of your potential. I went over a very comprehensive detailed guide. I'll make sure to link that down in the description. But until then, I'll give you the best tips. For PvP, head over to PvP, click on activities, and you'll want to do Capture the Flag if that's what you enjoy doing. This will net you a lot of good Umbrael shards and fun while doing it. But hey, I don't like PvP and I don't care. I just want to know the best route. Well, don't worry. I got you covered as well. We could bring you the best deals just like Walmart. Open up your map and you want to head over to Elite Chest Runs. These will be scattered around the map, but there's some in Elysian Wilds, Cutlass Keys, Brimstone Sands, Night Haven, Eden Grove, and Shattered Mountain. These ones will have the Elite Chest Runs, so how do I get into one? See this guy spamming XECR in the chat? You want to just hit XECR, then they'll invite you to the group. Make sure you're unflagged so you get inside, and then just open up your map to one of those zones I said previously, and you should see a bunch of dots. Follow the dots like you're following a train. Don't get left behind or you'll be lost at the bottom of the sewers. You can also do it in ebb and scale as well, so check there. What exactly do we get on these elite chest runs? Well, we get gear in Umbraels. Umbraels will level up our gear. And how high should we be leveling up our gear? Since the max is 800, so we push that all the way to max level and juice up like these men at the gym on the roids, or should we stay natty? I recommend staying natty and sitting at 785 or 780. After this point, the diminishing returns are heavy like an anvil. Once you go past this, you won't be getting too many levels per buck, and as your Umbrael shards will start to become a massive bottleneck. In order to avoid this, I recommend putting all your gear at 785 or below, unless you know you're going to be on top of that piece of gear like white on rice. What about artifacts? Well, we need artifacts if we want to succeed in Season 10. There's a plethora that you can acquire, but the best way to know which ones are the best, I'll break it down for you. 1. Check the mutations. You can tell if a dungeon is mutated by these circles around them. When you see a circle like this, if you're new, I highly recommend you doing this dungeon at least 5 times a week or until you get the artifact. As if you're a new player, odds are you need artifacts, and there's a lot of good artifacts scattered around Aeternum. And you don't want to miss the weekly artifacts because once they're gone, it's very hard to get them. Example being Lazarus mutation. Right now this is a mutation, but next week this could be completely gone. And you're saying, well, how long will it take for this baby to come back? It could take anywhere between 1 to 3 to 4 weeks, meaning if you miss one rotation, you could be out of an artifact for a month. So I'm not going to break down every artifact that you need, but just do the mutations. When you see them, you will thank yourself later. In terms of artifacts, I want to break down the most powerful ones come Season 10, so you know exactly which ones to hop on. 1. Serenity. This should be the king of PvE DPS come Season 10, as it comes with Trenchant Strikes and Trenchant Crits. Paired with its passive balance plate here, you should be nuking people left and right. Only major problem is this comes from the PvP track. You have to farm it. In order to grab it, you'll be spamming some PvP game modes. I recommend CTF, as that will net you Umbrael shards at the same time as a chance to get this beautiful weapon, the Serenity, or you can run arenas, as that is technically the fastest way. But what about other weapons that don't require PvE? I recommend picking up the Inferno. This thing is an absolute beast of a monstrosity, as this gives you 15% increased damage to targets within 15 meters. You'll be using this as a primary offhand to your main weapon. So for example, if I wanted to be a hatchet DPS rat, I would slot in the Inferno and then just never touch it and only stay on my hatchet. This will allow my hatchet to do the additional 15% damage, allowing me to DPS way higher than most players that are not running an optimal setup. Where do I grab the Inferno? Well, you grab it from this dungeon right here, Imperium Forge, and the sad part is this has to be mutated. So when the circle's glowing around it, it's time to hop in, because that artifact should become very strong come Season 10, since right now no other artifacts seem to be taking the king in terms of PvE territory. Another one is Dorgoth's Blade. I don't have it on my character, but it drops from the same dungeon and it works as the same way. You just do dots when you heavy and it's very good. Now how about armor artifacts? I know I'm getting a lot of questions. Well, for PvE, DPSs, sadly guys, it's going to be the old crown. You need to get this if you like it or not. This will be mandatory to run mutations or probably the raid coming up. And if you don't have it, well, guess what, boys? You won't be in those dungeons. You'll get kicked or annihilated. The ways you can grab this is through the PvP track once again, so you really got to put on the grind. But a substitution that might work, if you're lucky, is a Toon Leather Pants. This has the same +6 to all attributes as Old Crown, but it's just not as good because you can't put your own gems in there. You get a Toon Leather Pants just by following the main story quest up into Elysian Wilds. So if you're still new and leveling, I highly recommend following that main story all the way through to get that artifact, as you will need it to get into some good dungeons. Next up, for all my tank rats and solo players, I highly recommend picking up Bloodrinker. This is hands down the most fun artifact in the entire game if you can grab it. You get 25% lifesteal, but your damage is reduced by 20%. Don't worry, that's a fake number. It's lying to you like most politicians. It's only about 10% actual damage, so you'll still be hitting relatively hard while having a vampire lifestealing build just like the DLC. That drops in Starstone Mutation, and I highly recommend picking it up if you see a circle around this immediately, even if you're not into that or you're a healer, as not having Bloodrinker could be the difference between life and death. But now let me break down exactly what each game mode means, as you're going to be wondering, well, what's the difference between Catacomb, the raid, and all this other content in New World, so you have a better understanding. Well, Catacombs here is mainly for these sets. Bonuses, you have the Overcharge set and the Elemental Charge set. These ones are both solid, as the Overcharge set will more than likely be used as a top tier DPSing set. The Elemental Charge set, it's more for a bit of war action. And most people aren't into war, so let's go over the Overcharge set. If you want to be a PvE DPS god, then I highly recommend trying to farm this. Major downside is getting these $10 is extremely time consuming, especially right now when no one knows exactly what they're doing, and entering the Catacombs with a complete group of random is a recipe for disaster, so I'd recommend avoiding that for now. But that is how you get best in slot gear in terms of set bonuses. Next up, you will have the raid. The raid, you can hit activities, slap down the raid button, and head over here to Isles of Night. Here you can see all the gear you can acquire. This is where you'll be getting best in slot gear for these other set bonuses, such as Enrage, which I think is going to be completely broken come next patch. And it's exactly what I want to acquire for my builds for both PvP and PvE. But remember, in order to get into the Isle of Night, you desperately need some good gear already. So I highly recommend doing your elite chest runs for Umbrael shards, getting some good gear loadouts, and looking good to go. You want to prioritize gear, by the way, just a quick rule of thumb, that have a gem slot that's very nice. Also that has a few offensive slots. You don't really need a lot of defensive slots, especially as a DPS player, as that's just kind of a waste of our potential damage. Head over to your pieces of gear, you can hover over them and you can see exactly what they get. If you want to know how to upgrade gear, click on it like so and hit add charms or upgrade item. So hit add charms here, you'll see then all the charms that you have access to. Click it and you'll scroll down here. Here is your line of charms. If you click down here, you can switch out Vicious for something else that I would want. Now, if I did that, it would remove it for all of eternity. And I don't want to do that, so we're going to get rid of that change. Remember, it deletes your charm, so you can change your charms in and out as you play the game, but sadly, you cannot change perks. Perks are these static little icons down here. You see this one has a circle, and this one doesn't have a circle around it. Or if you look at my fire staff, this perk has a little circle behind it. That means I can change it. That is what you want to look for on your pieces of gear. You want 2 offensive, 1 defensive, ideally, with a good perk combination. The best perk for PvE, I believe, come Season 10 will still be Enchanted Ward, as Enchanted Ward is solid for overall survivability, as it nets you a negative 2% damage from light and heavy attacks on the new gear. On the old gear, it's still very strong, so even if you have old gear for all our returning players with Enchanted Ward, you should still be solid to do most PvE content until eventually you have to drop it for the better offensive set perks in order to maximize our DPS. And now let me just break down a few buffs that you want to have so you don't go into a dungeon blind. For all your new players, there is a coatings and ward potions. These are must for every dungeon. Even in the Catacombs, I like to bring these. These give you 10% absorption per enemy type, meaning if that enemy does 1,000 damage, it will now only do 900 due to this potion. And your ward potion here increases your overall DPS by that to the enemy by 15%, giving you a massive increase in terms of damage. Also, you can make sure you have your attribute feat. I recommend Sunrise, even for PvE, as there's a lot of dots, especially in Catacombs. This helps reduce that and gives you an extra amount of survivability. In terms of potions, I recommend just taking health pots or regens, but regens are relatively expensive. So if you're broke and living in a cardboard box, I recommend just sticking to health potions. You can also bring in your honing stones. I recommend sitting on tier 3, as these increase your weapon damage by 5%, and that's really all you need. The price to performance is very good here, compared to something like a gold touch honing stone, which is 7% damage, but this is usually 3 to 5 times the price of a tier 3, and because of that, I recommend just sitting on the tier 3s. Now, if you're wondering, well, how do I make these offensive charms, as I do not know what I'm doing? Well, I'm going to show you exactly how, but you'll more than likely end up having to buy them, and I salute you, sir, as these things are going to be relatively expensive. Your first option is to head over to the trade post, click whatever button it is, head down here to the gold looking bars, click Perk and Charm, and then click Perk Charms. Here you can see all the charms in the entire game. The greens are skills, the reds are offensive, and the blues are defensive skills. So once again, depending on what you read on your piece of gear, so for example, this is an offensive slot, meaning I can only fit the red charm inside there, and if it's defensive, it's blue, and its skill, it's green. Here you can see every charm in the entire game, so if you want to min-max your build yourself, this is exactly where you should go. Well, I don't know what exactly I should be looking for. Well, a good starting point is look for harnessing gems, as depending on your damage type, these could be crucial. For example, Greatsword loves slash, so slash damage would be a phenomenal choice. Another great choice for all DPS classes, by the way, would be something like Vicious, as Vicious increases our crit damage by 3%, giving us massive damage, as in PvE, you're generally always hitting back shots, yes, all the time. I mean, not only are you having a blast, and the mob is hating his life, but you'll be critting about 80 to 90% of the time, meaning Vicious is always up, giving it high potential. Same with PvP, I think Vicious is a great option. If you want a bit of life stealing and self-sustain, leeching is a phenomenal option as well, as will keep you alive when things get tricky. If you guys want to know how to craft them, head over to your nearest jewelry bench, aka the outfitting station. You'll need jewelry to be maxed level, so head over here and just scroll all the way down. You'll have to have jewelry 205, and here are all the crafting recipes. So if you're interested in crafting and you want to get ahead of the game, this is exactly where you would do it. Jewelry, mine's 13. So I'm a dead man walking, but hey, maybe you're more closer to 205. You can see all the recipes here and exactly know what's coming. You're saying, well, what's a chromatic seal? Seals are purchased from the faction vendor right here, and you can purchase as many as you want. They're 2,000 gold and a bunch of faction tokens. Well, that's all I'm going to talk about here today. If you're new here, like, subscribe, and make sure to follow. If you're interested, you can become a YouTube channel and support the channel further. Huge shout out to my brothers in arms.